When you're talking about this flying type of flying with water catchment and then flying through the smoke at treetop level, all I'm thinking is power lines
Yeah, that's the biggest killer.
of chopper pilots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it can really it can really cause you to come unstuck. Yeah, and it's hard. So yeah, you really got to kind of set up some of your own methods in, and we do courses on flying in the wire environment as well. So you kind of get trained, and you get your head around it. But there's little techniques that you can use to kind of make sure that you don't go into wires.
Because you said some dams that you're in, there's wires going across dams and waterways.
You see that a lot. Yep. And so you've got to use use some techniques and stick to your technique to make sure that you don't hit them.
What's your technique?
My technique is normally you recce the water hole source first. You've got a light bucket, and you just recce it nice as high as you can, as you feel comfortable. And then if you identify any wires, then that's cool. But if you don't, and you always assume there is a wire, so that's the first thing. And then I try to go in as vertical as possible through that what we call the wire zone. So anything kind of below, 100 feet, 200 feet really, tops big trees. If you don't see any, so sorry, let me back that up. You normally look. When you look for wires, you don't actually look for wires. You look for the hardware. So you're looking for towers, poles, insulators, all that kind of thing. You don't look for a wire because there's a good chance you won't see it anyway. So if you don't see any hardware, and I just always try to do a really steep ascent into the hole, and then you don't go and take a full load because you want to come out as vertically as possible. So you need a lot more power. So you just take out half a bucket and just try to keep it light. And then, of course, on your drop too, you kind of, that's the more dangerous part because it's smokier and, there's usually, sheds with wires running to them and things like that. But just go, do a bit of a recce first, keep it light and do a bit higher drop. Don't try to get it down too low and just try to keep some height, don't do anything silly until you start to get familiar with the area. And then, try to go back to the same hole all the time. Try to go back to your same water source. Don't start, because quite often you get to these fires and there's a dam there, and you feel the pressure to kind of, is that one closer or is that, and set yourself up so that it's a comfortable hole that you can climb out of easily, that you haven't got, you're down in a gully somewhere where the wind's doing weird and wild things. So you need a clean air, clean hole. And once you know there's no wires, then you're right, and try to just keep going back to that. Of course, if you got to move, then you just start the whole process again. So there's a few little things and you learn. Yeah, I remember the first couple of years when I started bucketing, especially I was down on the Hawkesbury and there's little wires running everywhere around there. And I nearly come unstuck, and then another time on a dam. Yes, there's been a couple of close calls. I haven't hit anything, but...
How long's the line dangling from?
We used to use 100 foot, 30 metres, but we tend to use 150 now. So, foot. And the reason for that is that we find that it's a bit safer. It's a bit slower to manoeuvre, but it's a bit safer getting water out of holes. So quite often there's tall trees, we might find a little creek that's got a couple of holes in it that, but you need that height so you're not getting right down in the creek and getting your tail down in near trees. So it just gives you that little bit more. But if it's a really smoky conditions, like we find that it's a bit too long because you can't get in. You end up in the smoke more than you want to be. So sometimes we might go out with 150, realise, no, I'm going to go back and put a short line on. And I usually carry a 25-foot line as well, a smoke line, and we just try to make, and then you can move a bit quick and get under the smoke, and you know you haven't got that big, you know, especially if you've got dams out in paddocks and things like that. Then
How big's your bucket?
the other, it's 1,000 litres. The other thing is too, when we're doing mop up with Parks crews on the ground, if you got a 150 line, it stops. It helps with the downwash. So if you got a short line, you're getting down in close to trees, you're blowing the crews over, you putting risk of blowing branches off trees, blowing dead trees over. There's a lot of downwash. So the machine I fly's got 3.5 ton downwash.
Yeah.
And you're coming in heavy too, so it just gives you a bit more grace. Height's your friend. So yeah, but it takes time to kind of be able to control that line too. But over time you get good at it and you do it wherever you want.